And on Capitol Hill tonight, it does not appear that Republicans are any closer to a deal with Democrats or each other on a new stimulus package. The stimulus will expire on Friday, and with it, the $600 a month unemployed Americans have been getting for several months. Steve Mnuchin and Mark Meadows met with Nancy Pelosi late today, and both sides say they are no closer to a deal. Also, up to half of the Republican conference may not support the GOP's own proposal. And there's growing concern tonight among GOP senators that if the Republicans can't get on the same page, the Democrats will ultimately get to shape a large portion of the bill. For more now on the negotiations in Congress on the next economic relief bill, we're joined now by Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth. Senator, thanks so much for your time.
Good to be on. Thank you.
So you released a statement that was very critical of Republicans for failing to address the economic deadlines that were looming and for also proposing to cut back those expanded unemployment benefits. But what's your response to Republicans who argue that those expanded benefits were meant to only be temporary and that continuing them at the $600 level will only discourage Americans from going back to work if they can simply stay home and make more money?
Where are they going to go back to work? We are shutting restaurants back down. We're shutting in all sorts of places. A lot of the economy that was opening up, we're shutting back down because this president has failed to provide the testing or any type of a coordinated response to COVID-19. Where are these people going to go to work? That's my question to them. The additional $600 a month are keeping many families afloat. Remember that if you're out of work, that you're paying for your health insurance out of pocket, for example. Our working families desperately need this money, and it's very cruel that my Republican colleagues would take this money away from working families at the same time that they are putting all sorts of little favors in there, bonuses in there for large corporations and for the Trump administration.
And you've also argued that Republicans should vote on the Democratic House's $3 trillion CARES Act. But as you know, Republicans have deep divisions on even spending $1 trillion on additional aid right now. So if the sides are so far apart, would it be more practical to work on a short-term deal to temporarily expand those unemployment benefits and address issues like extending the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures rather than a massive bill that may take weeks to negotiate?
Well, I think that we need to keep it all together in order to move it forward in a comprehensive way. To respond to this pandemic piecemeal just is not a viable process. You know, we need to make sure that we have money for example, more testing. We have to make sure there's more money for hospitals and healthcare providers and nursing homes. You know, they don't put any money in here for nursing homes, and yet that is where so many Americans are dying right now. This is a complex problem, and we need to pull together a solution that can address many of the issues. If we pass one thing at a time, what's going to happen is that we're going to leave some folks behind, and we can't afford that. They don't put enough money in here for schools. And yet they want students to go back to school full time. You know, I have a 5-year-old daughter. I want her to go back to school, but not if she's going to catch this pandemic because this White House has failed to respond to it.
I can sympathize. I have a 6-year-old at home as well. So let's focus for a moment on funding for schools and childcare, where there does seem to be some semblance of common ground. You recently tweeted, like so many, I'm scared that I'm my kid's sole source of education right now. I'm a pilot and senator, not an educator. But if schools open, it must be done safely, and this COVID-19 relief bill must include paid leave and childcare to give families the support they need. So do you see some opportunity for agreement on funds for schools, and where do you think the GOP bill falls short?
Well, I don't think there's enough money in here for schools. I do think that we need to have paid leave because that goes hand in hand with testing and responses. If someone cannot get low cost or free testing when they need it, people are going to go back to work because they can't afford to miss a paycheck. But then folks are faced with, do I leave my child at home by themselves with no child care while I go to work? How does that work out? We need some sort of paid leave so people can take time off if they do come down with this illness to stay home or to take care of a loved one so they don't spread the disease, the COVID-19 around the community. But then also we need to make sure that there's adequate child care so people can go back to work.
Even with more funding, do you realistically think that schools will be able to safely reopen for in-class instruction in a matter of weeks, or should parents assume that remote learning will be a major part of schools this fall?
Well, unfortunately, I think that remote learning will be a major part of what happens in schools just because this administration has failed to provide any guidelines or any assistance to schools for how they should open. President Trump talks about sending kids back to school, and yet the Department of Education under Betsy DeVos has not actually put forward any comprehensive guidelines or assistance to schools on how they can do this. Schools are on their own to try to figure out how they're going to maintain separation between students. There's not enough money in this package that allows schools to, for example, buy additional PPE or pay for additional cleaning. I've been homeschooling my daughter for 4 months, and I will tell you, it is tough. I want her to go back to school because I worry that she's falling behind, but I don't want her to get sick. I don't want her to die, and that's, I think, where most American families are. Yes, we want our kids to go back to school, but not at the expense of their health.
And just want to switch gears for a moment. As you know, many people are talking about you reportedly being on Biden's shortlist as a potential vice presidential candidate. I'm sure you don't want to speculate on your chances, but make the case for why you think you'd be prepared to be vice president if Joe Biden were to give you the tap on the shoulder.
Well, any of the wonderful women's names who have been mentioned, and there are lots of names that get mentioned, are well qualified. I think what needs to be discussed is the fact that the Biden administration is going to face multiple crises. They're going to be facing an economic crisis, a global pandemic crisis, a crisis that has to do with national security. You know, President Trump still has not done anything about these Russian bounties on American troops' heads in Afghanistan. He's going to be dealing with making sure that we get help to all of our municipalities who are struggling right now. When we talk about healthcare, it's not just a pandemic, but it's also the survival of our hospital networks. And so, you know, any one of us can step up and do a good job. And I think it's all about being part of the team. And Joe Biden will decide who he needs next to him in what position. I'm Team Biden, and I'm happy to play, you know, catcher or I used to be a second baseman. So, you know, whatever position on that team that will help us bind the wounds of this country and pull us out of this crisis that the Trump administration has gotten us into, I'm happy to do that.
How important is it that it's a woman of color?
I think it's very important that it's a woman of color. You know, I do think that we are having a lot of discussions right now about racism and the divides within our country. President Trump has time and again tried to go after Asian Americans in particular. He's talked about the Chinese virus. He's called it Kung Flu virus. You know, and we've seen Chinese Americans come under attack. I myself have come under attack recently. It's very easy to see Asian Americans as the other, that we're not truly Americans, and yet we love this country as much as anyone else and have contributed to this nation. So I think that it's important for the diversity of our nation to have representation in the very highest levels of office.
Senator Tammy Duckworth, we so appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.